The elegant dining room of the Grand Oak restaurant hummed with the quiet conversations of wealthy patrons. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over white tablecloths, and the soft clink of silverware against fine china created a rhythm of privilege and refinement. In the corner of this opulent space stood a grand piano, its polished black surface reflecting the glittering lights above. Maya Johnson moved gracefully between tables, her practiced smile never wavering despite the ache in her feet. She'd been working double shifts for 3 months now, saving every penny for her upcoming audition at the prestigious Manhattan Conservatory of Music. Her dreams of becoming a concert pianist kept her going through long nights and difficult customers. Tonight, however, would test her patience in ways she hadn't anticipated. Richard Pemberton III sat at table 7 with 3 of his business associates, his booming voice carrying across the restaurant. Everything about him screamed old money, from his custom-tailored suit to his gold cufflinks that probably cost more than Maya's monthly rent. He'd been drinking expensive scotch all evening, and with each glass, his voice grew louder and his behavior more obnoxious. "Excuse me, waitress," he called out, snapping his fingers in Maya's direction as she passed with a tray of desserts for another table. She took a deep breath, set down the tray, and approached his table with professional composure. "How can I help you, sir?" she asked politely. Richard leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips. His eyes traveled dismissively over her uniform. "That piano over there," he said, gesturing toward the corner. "It's been sitting silent all night. Don't tell me this establishment can't afford proper entertainment." "We have a pianist who performs on weekends, sir," Maya explained. "Tonight is Tuesday, so—" "I wasn't asking for excuses," Richard interrupted, his voice dripping with condescension. "You work here, don't you? Surely you can bang out some tunes. Or is that above your skill set?" His companions chuckled, emboldening him further. Maya felt her face grow warm, but she maintained her composure. "I'm here to serve dinner, sir. If you'd like, I can check if—" "Oh, come on," Richard said, pulling out his wallet with exaggerated flourish. He tossed several $100 bills onto the table. "There's $500 here. Play us something, unless you're too proud to earn some real money for once." The restaurant had grown quieter, other diners turning to watch the scene unfold. Maya's manager Tom hurried over, his face flushed with concern and embarrassment. He was a kind man who'd always treated his staff well, and Maya could see the conflict in his eyes. "Mr. Pemberton, I'm sure we can arrange for some music to be played through our sound system," Tom began. "I don't want a sound system," Richard said, his voice taking on a harder edge. "I want her to play. What's the matter? Is she not capable? Or maybe you're running a restaurant where the help doesn't know how to provide service." Maya placed a gentle hand on Tom's arm. She could see the fear in his eyes, fear of losing an important customer, fear of the negative review that could follow, fear of the power that men like Richard Pemberton wielded. She made a decision in that moment, not for Richard, not even for Tom, but for herself. "It's okay, Tom," she said quietly. "I'll play." She walked toward the piano, her heart pounding. Behind her, she could hear Richard's triumphant laugh and his comment to his friends. "See? Everyone has their price. About time someone taught these people their place." Maya sat down at the piano bench, her fingers trembling slightly as they hovered over the keys. She thought about all the hours she'd practiced in the cramped apartment she shared with her mother, the scholarship she'd lost when her father passed away, and she'd had to drop out of music school to support her family, the dreams she'd put on hold but never abandoned. Then she placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. She started with Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, one of the most technically challenging pieces in classical repertoire. The first notes rang out clear and powerful, immediately commanding attention. Her fingers moved with impossible speed and precision, dancing across the keys in a display of skill that only comes from years of dedicated practice and natural talent. The transformation in the restaurant was instantaneous. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Forks were set down. Servers stopped in their tracks. The music that poured from that piano was transcendent, each note perfectly placed, each phrase filled with emotion and power that seemed impossible to come from someone wearing a waitress uniform. Maya's eyes were closed now, lost in the music. She transitioned seamlessly into Chopin's revolutionary etude, her fingers flying across the keys with breathtaking virtuosity. The passion in her playing spoke of struggle and triumph, of dreams deferred but not forgotten, of dignity maintained in the face of disrespect. When she finally struck the last chord and the sound faded into silence, not a single person in the restaurant moved. Then, as if released from a spell, applause erupted. Diners rose to their feet, their ovation filling the space. Even the kitchen staff had emerged to watch, their faces filled with awe and pride. Maya opened her eyes and stood, her gaze finding Richard Pemberton. His face had gone pale, his mouth slightly open in shock. The smirk had vanished completely, replaced by something that might have been shame, or perhaps just the stunning realization that he had completely misjudged the woman he'd sought to humiliate. She walked back to his table with quiet dignity, her head held high. Without a word, she picked up the $500 he'd thrown down, folded the bills neatly, and extended them back toward him. "I don't need your money, sir," she said, her voice steady and clear. "I play for the love of music, not for the entertainment of people who mistake cruelty for power." Richard Pemberton sat frozen in his chair, the $100 bills hanging in the air between them. For the first time in his privileged life, he found himself completely at a loss for words. Around him, the applause continued, but it felt like an accusation rather than celebration. Every clap seemed to emphasize his ignorance, his arrogance, his spectacular miscalculation. I didn't know," he finally stammered, but Maya had already turned away, returning to her duties as if nothing had happened. Tom, the manager, approached Richard's table with newfound confidence. "Mr. Pemberton, perhaps it's time to settle your bill." His tone was polite but firm, lacking the nervous deference he'd shown earlier. Even he had been transformed by what he'd witnessed. As Richard fumbled for his credit card, his business associates were conspicuously silent. One of them, a younger executive named David, looked at him with barely concealed disappointment. "That was really something, Richard," he said quietly, and not in a good way. At the bar, an older gentleman in an expensive suit had been watching the entire scene unfold. Professor Edmund Cole was a distinguished member of the Manhattan Conservatory of Music's faculty, and he'd come to the Grand Oak for a quiet dinner before tomorrow's audition committee meeting. He'd been reviewing files of prospective students when the commotion had started. Now he rose from his seat and made his way toward Maya, who was refilling water glasses at a nearby table, her hands still trembling slightly from the adrenaline. "Excuse me, miss," Professor Cole said gently. "I couldn't help but be moved by your performance. That was extraordinary." Maya turned, surprised by the genuine warmth in his voice. "Thank you, sir. I'm sorry if it disrupted your meal." "Disrupted?" Professor Cole laughed softly. "My dear, that was the finest live performance I've heard outside a concert hall in years. Tell me, where did you study?" Maya hesitated, old wounds suddenly raw again. "I was at the Berklee College of Music for 2 years, but I had to leave when my father passed away. I've been teaching myself since then, practicing whenever I can." Professor Cole's eyebrows rose. "Teaching yourself, that Rachmaninoff? Young lady, do you have any idea how rare your level of talent is?" Before Maya could respond, her coworker Jenny rushed over, her eyes wide. "Maya, there are people asking for you, like a lot of people. They want to know who you are." Indeed, several diners had approached Tom, inquiring about the mysterious pianist. A woman in designer jewelry asked if Maya gave private lessons. A couple celebrating their anniversary wanted to know if she performed at events. The restaurant's social media was already lighting up with videos patrons had surreptitiously recorded on their phones. Meanwhile, Richard Pemberton couldn't bring himself to leave. He sat at his table long after his associates had departed, nursing a glass of water and replaying the evening in his mind. His wife Elizabeth had always told him that his sense of superiority would be his downfall. She'd left him 6 months ago, tired of his condescension and inability to see the value in people who didn't move in his circles. "I've become everything I used to hate about my father," he muttered to himself. Tom approached his table cautiously. "Mr. Pemberton, we're starting to close up for the evening." Richard looked up, and Tom was startled to see genuine remorse in the man's eyes. "That woman, Maya. I need to apologize to her properly. Not tonight, I know I've done enough damage. But can you tell me, why is someone with that much talent working as a waitress?" Tom considered the question carefully. Because talent doesn't pay the bills when life throws you curveballs. Her father got sick, medical bills piled up, and she sacrificed her dreams to take care of her family. She's been saving for months to audition at the Manhattan Conservatory, but between rent and helping her mother, it's slow going. He paused. "Maya never complains. She just works hard and keeps hoping." The words hit Richard like a physical blow. Here he was, inheritor of a fortune he'd done nothing to earn, and he'd mocked someone who had more talent in her little finger than he'd accumulated in his entire life. Professor Cole, meanwhile, was having an animated conversation with Maya near the kitchen entrance. "The auditions are tomorrow at 2 o'clock, he was saying. "I'm on the committee. I'll make sure your application is reviewed, regardless of when it was submitted." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "Professor, I appreciate that, but the application fee alone is $500. And I'd need to prepare, to practice on a real piano." "The fee is waived," Professor Cole interrupted. "Consider it a scholarship, for exceptional circumstances. As for practice, the conservatory has rehearsal rooms. I'll arrange for you to have access tonight and tomorrow morning." "But why would you do this for me?" Maya asked, overwhelmed. "You don't even know me." Professor Cole smiled. "I've been teaching music for 40 years, Maya. I can recognize when someone doesn't just play the piano, when the piano speaks through them. What you did tonight wasn't just technically perfect. It had soul, it had story. That's something that can't be taught." He handed her his business card. "Come to the conservatory at 8 o'clock tonight. The security guard will be expecting you." As the restaurant finally emptied, Maya sat in the break room, still processing everything that had happened. Jenny brought her a cup of tea and sat beside her. "Girl, you're blowing up online," Jenny said, showing Maya her phone. The videos of her performance were spreading rapidly, with thousands of views and comments praising her talent. Someone tagged it #Waitress Virtuoso, and now everyone's sharing it. Maya scrolled through the comments, reading messages of support and encouragement from strangers around the world. Among them was a comment that made her pause. "I was there tonight. I was the man who disrespected you. I was wrong. I'm sorry. You taught me a lesson in humility I'll never forget. R.P." Outside the restaurant, Richard Pemberton sat in his car, unable to drive home. He'd written that comment and meant every word, but he knew words weren't enough. He pulled out his phone and made a call to his lawyer. "Marcus, I need you to set up a scholarship fund. Full tuition, room and board, stipend for living expenses. For students with exceptional talent but financial hardship. Start with $50,000 a year. Make it anonymous." "Richard, that's very generous, but what brought this on?" his lawyer asked, surprised. Richard looked back at the restaurant, where he could see Maya through the window, laughing with her coworkers despite everything he'd put her through. "Let's just say I finally learned that a person's worth has nothing to do with their bank account," he said quietly, "and everything to do with what they do when someone tries to diminish them."